Welcome back to the Yoakum Strength Podcast. In today's episode, Austin sits down with strength coach Khrystopher Speed to dive into Olympic lifting. They explore how to balance skill work, strength work, and athletic qualities like sprinting and jumping, why mobility needs to target specific joints and patterns, and how clear intent can transform technique. You'll also hear about creative programming ideas, how Olympic lifts transfer to other lifts, and some insight into Khrystopher's own athletic pursuits. Enjoy the episode.
Before we hit the intro music, I wanted to introduce to you guys the Yoakum Strength Insider. The Yoakum Strength Insider is our online training platform that takes all of the ideas that we talk about on this podcast and implements them into a program that is available to you at the touch of your fingers. Our goal with the Yoakum Strength Insider is to create better movers, to level up your life, and to move forward from where you are. We do this in a holistic fashion. Not only will you receive a program that has helped hundreds of people become better movers, you'll also receive access to our app that allows you to track everything, has video links for all exercises, and allows you to be in constant communication with the Yoakum Strength coach. Along with this, you'll get our 30-page PDF nutrition and lifestyle guidelines. That includes everything from what to eat, how much of it to eat, why we're eating it, meditation habits, and other lifestyle habits that we implement with our clients to really level up their lives. If you're interested in trying out one of these programs, use podcast 25 in the discount section right before you pay for 25% off your first program. Boom.
This is the Yoakum Strength Podcast. Take the leap down the rabbit hole with us as we interview elite level guests to unravel what high performance really is.
All right, well, Coach, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you here.
How you going?
Good, dude. And you are the first coach that I am calling coach that actually coached me. So that's a pretty first and sickening. Actually, I think I had my high school strength coach. I had my high school strength coach on here, so that was a long time back. But the actual first coach that has like actively coached me within the past like 5 years on the Olympic lifts, and I ran your program for 3 months. You were trying to fix my Ollies and did a really nice job. We're not forehead snatching anymore, and that's a pretty big gain there. So I want to say thank you for that.
No, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good fun.
Yeah, the one of the things that I was when we were doing the programming stuff, like one of the things that I kind of loved about your programming was it didn't seem like it looked like you had taken a lot of the stuff that I was doing. Like you didn't throw out, I mentioned this in a couple of videos, but you didn't throw out the things I was doing that was working. You just kind of added in the things that I sucked at and things I needed to work on and kind of kept like my same kind of principled approach to like training. Like one thing I was telling you that I really liked doing was like EMOMs. And like for a lot of my program, you like kept those EMOMs in. And I thought that was like a really cool thing of like taking the things that you know already work, like why are we over like thinking that, and then doing the things that you think I suck at, which was like a lot of the mobility stuff. But I just want to hear your thought process. Like, what do you think about when it goes behind like programming for somebody when it comes to the Olympic lifts, and like when you were building out this program for me, like what were your thought processes? What were you seeing? What was the philosophy behind it?
I think your programming was interesting because there's a few people I've had who want to do Olympic lifts alongside doing other stuff. Like you're obviously playing softball and whatnot. So you've got to balance it together. And I think we were just focusing on snatch and clean, which didn't make it easier because it's only two movements. But the main thing is like just looking at how many times a week do you need to do the key movements to be able to actually get good at them. And in my mind, like cleans, especially because you've done them like from, I mean, since high school.
Yep.
Like I'm not that concerned that if you only clean heavy once a week, it's gonna be trash. With snatches, I think snatches are a bit more like they're probably a little bit more like batting in terms of like if you do it once a week, it might not get worse, but it's probably not going to get better. Do you know what I mean? Like as in you're not going to get much long-term practice out of it. So the main thing was just trying to figure out how can I get you to do snatches and cleans enough throughout the week where you're going to enjoy it, but it's going to be as often as possible to be able to make you improve, and also so that we don't tank recovery. I remember one stage we had it where just every Monday was trash. It didn't matter what we did, but we still had to get a session in. So like just adjusting it so you were getting two to three sessions of snatches in, 1 to 2 sessions of cleans in some respects, and then trying to usually get in 2 to 3 squats. With you, it was different. And I found this for other people who sprint a lot. 1 to 2 squats is enough if you're doing a lot of sprint, like actual sprint work, because I think the loading is different. And then just making sure you're getting in one to two like pulls or hinges, I think that's usually about enough. And then if you were to do a traditional program where you were jerking as well, I would just go with you need to jerk once with clean and jerks. So like doing a clean and jerk, and then probably jerk once or twice separately. It's just making sure the frequency is right, really. And then after that, you then start to look at what do you need to fix in your technique. So what warm-up exercise are you using? What variations are you using? And then, like you were saying before, we didn't throw out EMOMs. It's just looking at, well, what's going to make you do it? Because I like doing, let's say, like sets of four off of blocks because I find that really useful. If I just went, hey, dude, you're going to be doing sets of four and everything, you're just going to go, no, you can go fuck yourself, give me my money back. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just not going to do it. If it's also movements that you find difficult, but if it's like, oh, I love EMOMs, I love sprinting at the beginning of sessions, but KDot's given me an awful snatch variation, but it is an EMOM and it is open-ended so I can max out. It's just, do you know what I mean? It's getting you to do it often enough and enjoy it enough to get better. Like, I don't think for most people it needs to get much more complicated than that.
Dude, that's I like hearing your philosophy behind it because like that was one of the cool things is like you and I weren't like really talking about the philosophy behind the program. I just liked like I liked when you program for me, I would give you a little bit of feedback and then I would be like, okay, I would like picking up on like, okay, what are you trying for here? And like what are you thinking about here? And that was a really cool kind of like coaching experience myself because I kind of like felt that and like how you were programming that thing. And the Mondays were shit. Like I thought this was really cool. Like I think you're one of the best at this. So we're like again adjusting like it's not like I think a lot of strength coaches like the ego is so much into like okay like it needs to be my program, it needs to be this way, and you're like every Monday shit because we played 12 softball games on a weekend, like we're gonna make Monday more of a like volume snatch day and like be able a little bit lighter work and be able, and it was such a massive switch to the second day of snatches then in the week. It was almost always a PR or like a big pull day, and I felt so much better. And one of the things like you were talking about, I was like the snatching volume, the snatching frequency. This is something that I've really like started to realize is like if I am not snatching at a high frequency, and maybe I would like to hear your thoughts too, is like, is this everybody with snatching, or is this just because I have such a lower volume of snatches in my lifetime? But it's like if I don't have a high frequency of snatches, it's absolutely dog water. I can clean once a week and keep that technique and feel good. Whereas if I'm not snatching 3 times a week, it literally feels like I'm losing the groove and the connection to the bar.
Mm.
And it really connected to like batting practice for me, where it's like kind of the same way. It's like when I was very mediocre at hitting a softball, I had to stick with hitting a softball so much more often. Otherwise, like if I took 2 days off, I would come back and the bat would feel like a foreign object in my hand, right? Now I have got to a point where the skill work is so high and invested so high in batting where now I can take a week off and I can still go back to that skill set. And it's just like cleans to me. I can go back to hitting, I can go back to cleaning. And maybe it's not as 1% of 1% level that I want to reach, but like I have that connection, I have that feel. And that's what I'm like really trying for with the snatch is trying to up that volume, trying to up that frequency of the snatches to where I can get the snatches to that point. Because right now it's like I'm in that mediocre kind of in like mediocre world where like I'm putting mediocre volume, mediocre frequency into it, and it's kind of staying at that mediocre skill set. And I was ranting about this on the YouTube where like if you just in the front end invest heavily to get past that mediocre level, it's almost like the lazy way to get good at a skill. It's lazy in quotations, but it's like you put a ton of effort in, you put a ton of frequency in, you put a ton of volume in, and then you can actually get that skill set to a point in which it's not like a skill hold where you lose it every time you stop doing it.
Mm. Yeah, I think with snatches, it's going to be more like batting. It's going to be more like probably kicking in like any sport when you're kicking in ball sports, or probably to be honest, probably sprinting as well. Like I think there's a guy called JT Performance. He has like this really nice infographic where it just goes, if you stopped training today, how long would it take for things to start to fall apart? And maximal strength is like a month. Like if you just don't hit like a heavy single, you don't do any strength work for a month, you're not going to get weaker noticeably. Like you might get out of practice with like a back squat or a deadlift, but your actual raw strength doesn't go down. Whereas when it comes to sprint speed, it's like you've maybe got 5 to 10 days, and then things are going to get less sharp. And I think that if like sprinting is the fastest, most powerful thing we can do, you've then probably got like some striking, some throwing, like batting stuff here. You've then got weightlifting, like I reckon here, like along with like throws and stuff. So if you think about it, it's like, well, if you don't practice it enough, you're just not as sharp. So then your timing's not as good. You don't have a good feeling for like what's going on. So of course it's not going to be right. And I think snatches and jerks are quite like fast, and they're quite skill based, which is why you need to do them more. And cleans are like they're more strength based. Like how many guys do we see have really quite bad technique, don't contact the bar, don't hook grip, bend their arms, they just do a starfish catch, but they can clean three, maybe four plates. Like it happens quite a lot. Whereas the snatches, you're not seeing anyone false grip muscle snatch starfishing 140. Like it doesn't happen. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they're not doing that with three plates. And I think it's because the skill element is so much higher that then the margin for error is a lot much lower. So then like with cleans also, because it's so heavy, it's a strength stimulus. So I think your body remembers it for longer because it's closer to your squats and your deadlifts. Like you hear it from a lot of the old school West Side guys all the time. Like, oh, we only really do proper heavy deadlifts once a month. And then we kind of do other stuff the rest of the time because otherwise we just don't recover well because the deadlift is so hard, because it's so heavy. Cleans is kind of a bit like that with weightlifting. If you're just cleaning heavy all the time, yeah, your technique will get better, but you're just whacking yourself into a hole so hard that you're not recovering. So, like, actually, heavy cleans once a week, maybe once every other week, and doing them light on the other week's probably better. Whereas the snatches, it's like, it's just not heavy enough. Like, if you have a normal strength profile, so let's say, like, you clean 80-ish% of your back squat, so then you probably snatch more like 60 to 65 to 70% of your back squat. If you think about like how heavy 70% on a back squat is, it's not that heavy. So if you at your peak once a week and you snatch 70% of your back squat, it's not a large strength stimulus. It's a good power stimulus, but it's not a large strength stimulus. So you recover from it quite quickly, and then I think you almost regress because of that. It's like you recover too quickly from it to just be able to do it once a week super hard, then leave it, like as well as the skill element.
I really like that thought process behind it too, because I was thinking about that as well. It's like the thing that got me really good at hitting was doing 100 swings every single day, right? And I was like trying to apply that thought process to Olympic lifts. Like it works in some sense, but like you're saying, like you really can't recover from doing 100 snatches a day, 100 like cleans a day. But the lack of load on the snatches, it does allow you to, obviously it's not 100, but you can do it at a higher frequency and still recover. Whereas again, if I'm doing that with my cleans, there's no fucking way, dude. My spine is gonna fuse in absolute
Yeah.
like one piece. So I kind of like that thought process of combining the like what that load is and how fast you can cover with that load and optimizing your intent, optimizing your frequency of that stuff based off the recovery of like what it allows you to do. And it's just a lower load so you can do it at a higher frequency.
Yeah, I think it's like I can't remember what his name is. He was on Dane's podcast or YouTube a couple of weeks ago. He coaches a triple jumper. I can't remember what nation she's from, but he was talking about something similar. He just said that like when it comes to triple jump reps, he's like you can't do probably more than three or four proper like top speed ones a week. Like you're just not, it's not happening. Like you're just going to either get so slow and off the floor, it's no longer the same thing, or you're going to hurt yourself and not be able to recover. So he's like your actual reps have to be on point. So you have to be really, really intense with your focus when you're doing them. And then you have to do all these drills and like variations around it to make up the difference, to basically be able to make up the reps that you can't do at a super intense level. So like with weightlifting, you'll see people do powers, do pulls, do muscle snatches, do different drills basically to try and work on different components of the lift that don't require them to be as fast, as intense, as heavy, or as like hard on recovery, which I think is important when you start to get better. And I think at some point you will cross over to a point where snatch and clean and jerk does kind of become like batting, or it becomes like sprinting, where it's like, look, your technique's pretty good. You're gonna get whatever you're gonna get on the day, and that's down to how good of an athlete are you, like how powerful are you, how well conditioned are you, and how fast are you. But I think for most people, they think after 2 or 3 years they're at that point. Whereas when you get 2 or 3 years in, you still have a lot of stuff you need to mess with technically, whilst you still get stronger. It's not probably until you get to like beyond year five where your technique is more or less your technique if you've been taught weightlifting properly, and then you don't really need to focus on it as much. It's more about just getting stronger, more powerful.
Yeah, and I think that variation approach is kind of cool too, because it's kind of what you and I do with like if we're taking out Olympic lifts, like how we would train an athlete too. If like how can you get an athlete like, and this is how I think about like the variations, like how can I get an athlete to sprint as many times as possible? How can I get an athlete to jump as many times as possible within a week? Because like if you want to get good at something, you got to do it, and you got to increase the intensity, you got to increase the frequency, you got to increase the volume, right? But if you just do that by running your face through the wall by doing, let's say, like the same deadlift over and over and over again, like the body's going to break down. But like simple tiny tweaks in these movement patterns of like jumping a different way rather than doing like the same triple jump over and over again. Maybe we're doing like some sort of box jump or adding a plane jump or adding rotation there. There's something about that, like just slight, and I think a lot of it, like you were saying, is like that intensity, like you know you can deadlift 600 pounds. So the only way that you can get a win on that deadlift that day is being near 600 pounds, right? Like otherwise you're going to feel like shit about yourself. But if you switch up that deadlift
Mm.
variation, you can still get some good pulling volume done that day. In the same way that jumps, like your vertical, if you're just sending that vertical every single day, you know what your kind of barrier is. You kind of know what you need to hit that day. And if it's not, you're going to psychologically fuck yourself. And if you push yourself to like get that win every day, you're going to physiologically fuck yourself. You know what I mean? So like I think the variation allows you to get like a psychological win while slow cooking the process. Because what you were saying, like it's a 5-year journey. It's a 10-year journey. Like you got to find a way to make that frequency and volume and intensity last 5 to 10 years without breaking yourself. And I do believe the variations of these things is
Mm.
super helpful for that. I like your kind of approach with that when it comes to Oli lifts.
Yeah, and I think you can look at it a bunch of different ways. When it comes to variations, you can look at it as specific tools, and you can look at it from, in my mind, like three different angles. There's the technical stuff, the movement patterns, which you can't separate from everything else. Like the physical qualities you have, how you're built, how fast you move, is completely interwoven into how your technique is. Like you can't broomstick technique someone into being a world champion. It doesn't happen. The next thing you can do is you can look at, like, let's say you can be a nerd with all the force velocity profile stuff. So like if anyone follows Brandon Nicardi, or if anyone doesn't, go and watch his stuff, and you'll see that he does a lot of stuff on, well, what's the force velocity profile or the speed of it, or the acceleration on certain exercises. So I know what I'm working with. Because like something similar to block snatch. Why do we all like block snatches? We can lift more on them because you're in a more advantageous position. The bar's closer to you, and it feels like you're moving faster than normal. But you're not, because you don't have as much room to accelerate the bar. So actually, it's more of a strength exercise because you're having to work harder to get the bar going, and it's taking you longer to get that force to top. So you're not experiencing as much speed. So actually, it's going to make you. It's probably a bit more of a strength exercise than it is an actual scientific speed exercise. Whereas if you look at all like the rebound stuff, bouncy snatches, deficit snatches, you have more distance to accelerate the bar over. So you could reason that, oh, actually, that's faster. And you can look at it that way. You can look at, like, what do my athletes recover better from? What do they need? Do they need more strength? Do they need stuff at slower velocities, fast velocities? Then the other thing you can look at is what's going to make them actually pay attention to the exercise and train hard. Like you can look at it like because snatch and clean and jerk, as much as we have different variations, they're not really variations. As much as someone can be like, oh, but a block snatch is totally different to a snatch. It's like, dude, I get it, but it's fucking not, is it really? Like a no contact snatch, is it different to a snatch? Yeah, but is it really? Like if you're looking like, was it Janovic says a low resolution. If you're looking at it with a low resolution lens, does it look somewhat like a snatch? Yeah, cool. It's probably a snatch exercise. So like you're just taking the same food and flavoring it differently so that someone wants to eat it. Like if you've been doing no foot snatches for 6 months and training's going well, but you just don't want to do it, it probably also means that exercise isn't giving you any like it's not giving you any new sensory information or stimulus. But if I go, right, mate, you're just going to start doing deficit snatches, but you're going to do one deadlift from deficit, you're going to touch and go snatch it, then all of a sudden you'll get a new feeling of the exercise. Like sometimes not even picking a variation because it's what you think the athlete needs, but just making them do a variation because they haven't done anything different in 2 months is what will spur progress. Like sometimes I debate when I change someone's exercises, like did I give them the exercises they needed to fix a movement thing, or was it just they just needed a different exercise because they just weren't getting anything, they weren't getting any like powerful stimulus or like sensory feedback off of the exercise anymore because they're so used to it.
Yeah, and that's something the sensory and feels, dude. That is something that one I feel like you did a really nice job of like balancing in the program. Is like you gave me, I felt like, and maybe you didn't do this on purpose, but I felt like you gave me one snatch variation I was absolutely fucking trash at, and like that was like the thing I needed to work on. I'm trash at, I'm bad at, and then you gave me one that was just like a different variation, and then you just let me snatch. You know what I mean? Like you gave the three to where the sensory like the variation there like so many times like you always gave like cues of like hey think about this do this but you're never like a form Nazi and like hey this needs to be fixed this it's like you just let me feel the
Mm.
differences and there were so many like small little light bulb moments going through of like I would try that snatch variation like oh like I felt that pull in this way on that time right or wrong like I felt something there that I wasn't feeling before maybe I can try that out on my Friday snatches when I'm going actually heavy and seeing if that can
Yeah.
carry over and dude, like again, like recently, the big one is like it wasn't focusing on, I wasn't doing it. I can't remember even what snatch variation I was doing, but I was like doing the snatch variation, and I finally got like the only way I could get that snatch variation was like actually doing a full snatch, like actually getting underneath the bar and like squatting underneath it. And I was like, oh my God, that's the first time I've actually done a full snatch the entire time I've been snatching, where
Oh,
it's like everything was a power. And like getting that feel, I was like, oh my God, I can actually full snatch now. I can bring that to my real snatch, and that's going to help a ton.
Yeah, I think it was probably that it's the demo video was of Mirko Zanni with the Italian guys. It's where he does the snatch where he literally leaves it like hanging in the air and tries to snap her under it at the last second,
The
strap her legs
suicide
in.
snatches I
And then we
loved.
did
I
those and we
call
were like,
them
oh,
suicide
this is what.
snatches, but those were sick. I love
Yeah,
those.
but it's like I think a lot. I've had that with a few people where like when you have that instinct where you think, oh, the bar's reached my hip, I need to pull under this now. That like it distorts the timing. So because you try and use your arms too soon, now like you're almost being like, right, just don't use them. Like just leave it way too late. And then for a lot of people, if your timing is like so like smushed together, it actually just spreads it apart so the timing's normal. Whereas if you watch some people who've got like really nice snatch timing already, like they really understand how to delay it, it doesn't end up looking that different. They're almost like, mate, what do you want me to do? Like I'm already waiting more than long enough. But like, yeah, that's a drill that I really like, especially when you get people who are quite athletic but super muscular up top, which like you have that. Like, I mean, the reason you can forehead snatch is because you have so much like ability to create tension in your upper body, in your like, upper back and your shoulders. So then like making you have to just leave the bar floating there before snapping under, like that's feeding into that's dragging you away from what you're doing too much of. So then you'll actually do the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that you gave me cue of like instead of pulling the elbows up, you were like giving the cue of like pulling the elbows back almost. And for some reason that gave me like
Yeah.
that snap feeling too. That was a really good cheat code that I had in one of the YouTube videos too. I was like, damn, that was a massive eye opener for me. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how do you balance when you're programming and working with athletes? Because I felt like you did a really nice job of kind of touching on all three of these things. And I think it really depends on the athlete in front of you of like where their skill sets are and where their skill sets aren't. But like the balance between the skill of the exercise, the like limiting physical qualities of the exercise. Let's say it's like a mobility issue, like the mobility
Mm.
piece of it versus like you're just not strong enough, you're just not powerful enough. We need to go focus on like those like aspects of it. Like I felt like your program did a really nice job of including all three of those things, but emphasizing the things I sucked at, which was like a lot of the overhead mobility stuff you had me doing, like even just like that preacher stretch, like with the elbows up and the plate behind the head, like that was such a like money maker to like get into that overhead position. But like I don't think I could have skilled my way out of like being able to do that. Like I needed a little bit of an unlock mobility wise. Like you gave me the unlock mobility wise.
Yes.
You had me focus on a skill, which is still obviously like a big issue, is like just not knowing the skill of snatching and then being able to apply my strength and power of everything else that I've been doing. But like I'm sure you have other athletes that are just like they're really technical, they're super hyper mobile, and they're just not strong enough. Like, how do you go about like
Yes.
approaching the
Yeah.
the three quality piece that go into a snatch and only lifts?
I think you're always going to have, and then again, there'll be people who are like outliers with this, where they just don't need to do things as much as other people maintain it, or they need to do things way more. But you just got to look at it as like, well, what's like if you're starting off with like, technical work, so snatch, clean, and jerk, your strength work, your mobility work, and then I don't know, like your speed work, like let's say like pliers and stuff, and they all take up like an equal piece of the pie. You then just have to look at, well, I can shrink any one of these things down so they're really small, but they can't not be a slice of the pie anymore. So then you just start to adjust for it. And I think with you, it's quite easy because you've done enough variations of stuff constantly with your own programming through every kind of facet of strength and conditioning. I'm gonna have a pretty good impression of what you can and can't do. So then when it's like, all right, so you're not able to you're so when it was like, the forehead snatch period where like everything was just dumping onto your head, it's like, well, I don't think you're weak because your bench is pretty good. I've seen you strict press, I've seen you walk on your hands, I've seen you do handstand press ups. You're not weak. So it's like I think it's a mobility issue because of like let's say like softball and stuff, because of just the amount of force you're putting through your shoulders. And also coming from a contact sport, you are just used to basically folding the shoulders forwards to stop them being ripped off your body. So,
Yeah.
but because you do all of these other things, I'm like, well, I now don't need to make you go and try and do handstands and make you try and go and do all these other things because you've kind of given me the data through even just Instagram story videos of just seeing what you can do. So then it's like, oh, it's a mobility issue. So then that means instead of warming up and doing primers for, let's say, activation for bracing, like one of the girls I have, she just has quite narrow shoulders. So like as in she doesn't go, some people have like a V tape or an X frame. She's just straight up and down. So she has really, really real bad trouble with trying to stabilize her shoulders and her pelvis. So a lot of her stuff is you're going to be doing overcoming ISOs or you're just going to hold positions, like whether it's for long form ISOs or overcoming, because she needs to do that. Whereas for you, it's like, no, your body needs to relax. So I'm not going to make you do drills. They're about holding positions and creating tension. I'm going to try and make you relax into stuff and yield with it. So it's just looking at like, what do I need to get you to do to make these exercises more beneficial? And then we just like basically just do as much of that as we need to be able to get it in there. And I do think it is easier when people train in a more generally athletic fashion because you can already look at what's not holding you back. Because some people, like, you look at their technique, you look at their strength, and you think, yeah, they should be able to snatch clean way more. But then you'll go, oh, can you just go and do some skips outside and just film them and sprint with a sled, and they just can't move fast. But you don't realize because they're so good in the gym. But then when you take them to emphasize speed, you're like, oh, you literally are uncoordinated. Like, you actually can't move for shit. Okay, now I know what to fix. Whereas if someone is doing all the stuff like you do in a program already, it's really easy to just look through it all and go, oh, okay, cool, I know what we need to fix. And
Well, and
then
that was one of the things that
you
you
just
made a
move
post on this the other day where it's like you were talking about sprinting for Olympic lifters and not sprinting in the sense of you were talking about it in a way of like it's not you're not training a general athlete that is just sprinting because they need to sprint in their sport and they're doing only lifts for their sport, right? You were talking
Mm,
about how sprint, like if you're an Olympic lifting athlete, like that is your sport, you should sprint and you should jump and you should do these things because it makes
yeah.
you more powerful and explosive. And I thought that was really cool. Like I wonder, like like I was telling you before, I think we started recording. Like I did a couple Olympic lifting programs before you, a couple after you now, and not a single one touches on any athletic component, right? Like it's literally just straight Olympic lifts. And I loved
Mm.
your post of like, no, this isn't for like, okay, it is for the athletic qualities and doing that. And if you're an athlete that is using Olympic lifts for your sports, obviously you're sprinting, that's like common sense, that's just common strength conditioning. But no, if you're just an Olympic lifter and that is your like Olympic lifting is your main sport, you should still sprint, which I thought was a really cool like talking point that I feel like if you're looking at most Olympic lifting programs, they're not sprinting. They're not talking about that.
No, and I think some of them don't even do stuff like like I think like you can't substitute for sprinting, but you can get the minimum benefits you need from sprinting by doing stuff like hopping, skipping, bounding, and proper plyometrics. I think you're not going to get as much of a benefit, but you will still get some. And I think it's like I think some of the, like all the guys who are really weird and want to talk about, like, oh, how do we train as cavemen and all that weird stuff. I think there is some merit to like looking at, well, what are we really built super well to do? Well, we're built really well to run and walk and run forwards, like to run and walk through space. Because it's like there's a reason why we've got a big Achilles tendon and massive butt cheeks. Do you know what I mean? So it's like if you're trying to get your body strong as possible, you need to experience as much force as fast as possible. So then it would make sense to use the movement pattern that we're the best suited for to do that. Because like a squat, how many people have to do like a lot of squatting before they get good at squatting? And I don't just mean like years, I mean like they need to warm up for 20, 30 minutes to really get prepped into it. Whereas sprinting, if we're being real, if you are physically prepared enough, we can get you to start doing some full speed 10 to 20 yard sprints, probably in about 5 to 10 minutes. If you just warm up in that time, because your body's suited for those motions, you're not having to teach it to do something that it has to condition and change its movement patterns for. It's just something that your body's supposed to do. So, like, with that in mind, it's like if you're gonna stop basically do what a lot of weightlifters do, don't walk at all during the day, don't do any cardiovascular activity that's cyclical, and don't sprint. You're taking away three things that your body is like it gets a lot of benefit from. So then when you feel sluggish, you feel slow, you don't feel like you can move fast. It's like, well, it's because like you're not exploiting the thing that all requires almost no skill development to do. You just need to you just need to go do it 2 or 3 times a week. And like when you look at like he's a Hong Kong jumper, sorry, a jumper from Hong Kong. I think his name is Michael something. He's on Instagram. I can't remember what his name is. I think John Evans, the THP guy, coaches him. He weighs like I don't even think he weighs 70 kilos, and he can power clean 150 from hang, but he doesn't focus on weightlifting. He just power cleans once a week. He might do some half squats and some step ups. Why? Oh, because he experiences massive forces through sprinting and jumping. So when you look at that, it's like, who's then the next group of athletes who weightlift probably better than a lot of weightlifters? It's throwers because they do plyos. They focus on moving stuff fast. They throw stuff and they sprint and they lift heavy. So it's like, at some point, I think as weightlifters, you do have to look at, well, why are people who don't do my sport beating me at my own sport when they just use it as an accessory? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, look at the stuff that they do that you don't. And I think you don't have to make yourself into a sprinter, a jumper, a thrower to do it. You just need to look at it the same way they look at, I'm going to do weightlifting to feed my jumping or my sprinting or my throwing. You go, I'm going to sprint, jump, and throw to feed my weightlifting. Like it doesn't, like you almost don't need to really change the training tools. You just need to you just need to put more time into some and less into others. And like you're saying, not go, well, you're just going to do squat, snatch, clean and jerk 4 times a week. Like you just don't need to do that.
Well, and you literally pointed out the paradox that I've written down. It's like you'll have a lot of Ole coaches, like because their bias is Olympic lifting, right? They will push Olympic lifts on athletes to be able like, hey, this is a stimulus you can use to better your athletics, right? And even a lot of Ole coaches will be like, I don't need you to be perfect in Ole lifts because we're using it as an accessory to develop some of these athletic qualities to help your field. And then the paradox is vice versa. They can't see why you should use some of the athletic stuff. It doesn't matter how it looks. Like again, if you're an Olympic lifter, we probably don't need you sprinting like a Olympic sprinter, right? But doing sprints,
Yeah.
doing jumps, doing some throws, you don't really see the same exact principle that they use with Olympic lifting and the thought process that they have in their head. Like they almost bias themselves out of okay, the vice versa is also true, where you can plug and play some of this athletic stuff. Doesn't matter how it looks. It's just for the stimulus, the physiological stimulus there to get better at your Oles, and your Oles are your sport, and that's where we do need to spend a majority of our time to like get better at these things. But that doesn't mean you can't supplement anywhere else. It seems like such a like kind of common sense paradox of they got it right, they got it 50% right, but when it's like the reverse, they don't do it.
Yeah. Like I think as well, like when we're looking at like weightlifting, you're trying to produce as much force as possible, and we're not using one of the tools that helps us produce as much force as possible. The reason I think that so many coaches in high schools, especially in American colleges, use weightlifting so much because it's like, well, if you've got kids where, and you will probably have experienced this way more than me, like they can't hold their body straight on a wall drill, like they're that weak, or they go to accelerate and instead of being able to keep their back straight and stay low and bend their legs, they go like they turn into a cat. Like they round their backs over and they like almost have to like they it almost looks like they're doing a dribbling ankling drill. They can't actually open their strides up. So then when you're that weak you then need something that's going to allow you to load your body at a lower velocity to strengthen positions, which is why doing Olympic lifts, doing squats and deads, split squats, step ups and stuff works so well because it's like, well, you literally can't hold these positions anyway. So then the lifting is going to help to drag your sprinting up. But then at some point, the sprinting and plyos, because now you're strong enough to do them, it leapfrogs the lifting and it drags it back along. And eventually, I think you get to that happy place where they feed each other, like as in the weightlifting feeds the sprinting feeds the weightlifting. I think Matt Watson said it best. I've asked him this question a few times, I think, and I've got the same answer every time. And when I asked him when you started lifting, because he didn't start off lifting when he was jumping. I said, what did it do? Like, did it make you loads better jumping? And he said, no, it wasn't like he did a 6 week program for the first time on like squats and power cleans, and he was like, oh my God, I jumped 3 inches higher. He was like, I just stopped getting hurt. I stopped feeling brittle. I stopped getting hurt. And I just felt like, oh, I can just train. I can just do whatever. Like I'm good to go. And I think that's the level you want to get to. You want to use the lifting to pull your sprinting along until like your sprinting is like basically the power, the main stimulus. And then all of a sudden now, if you're a team sport athlete or a non-strength athlete, your strength stuff now just supports all your other training. Whereas if you're a weightlifter, sprinting and plyometrics, if you do them properly for long enough, it becomes basically your ace card that helps you to beat everyone else because now you're so much faster and more powerful than everyone else, and you also recover faster. Like I think that's the way it should be looked at. But I think it's also getting weightlifters who are really, really used to their routine because it does attract a certain type of person, like who really like being in the gym. They like the same platform they use all the time. They like training at the same time. They like listening to the same music. They like being in the same gym. They like doing the same stuff. So then when you say, hey, go outside to a track twice a week, they're going to be like, absolutely fucking not. And if there's any reason why why you can justify not doing something you're scared of doing because it's different, I think is going to be it. I think it will be when you get some lifters from like, especially in like in Australia, the example is Brandon's lot, where there's some of them who are getting onto an international stage, but they train the way that we like to train. Then all of a sudden people will go, oh, I should do that because I want to change my routine more because I don't want to get beaten by someone who's doing something different when I could do it as well. Like I think that's what the stage will have to get to.
Yeah, 100%. Dude, I also just think there's like a ton of low-hanging fruit there for like again, like you're saying, like just a slight intro of the plyometrics and a slight intro of the sprints. Like it's just such a big piece of the puzzle that you're missing. You just add in 1 to 2
Yeah.
days a week of that. It's crazy. And like I had the actually like kind of opposite is like when I was starting to like really go full ollies and I was doing like a lot of softball, I just wasn't sprinting that much. Like I was sprinting in softball, like doing that, but like I was kind of being a bum about running fly tens and doing it. And 3 weeks ago, started running the fly tens, and it was like my first measured fly 10 in forever. And like, I was like, this is gonna be shit. Like, and I was all right with it being shit. I was like, fuck, I haven't run a fly 10 in forever. And dude, my time was exactly my time when I was sprinting 3 to 4 times a week, right? Like when I was actually focusing on trying to get faster and going through. And I was like, oh my God, there was
Mm.
so much low hanging fruit from the ollies that I was missing out on just by not doing a lot of that stuff in the weight room. And I bring it back, and now my sprints are very fast and I feel really good without like any focus on it, and my jumps are like exploding. And like it was just like the exact opposite of like how a Ollie lifter, if they start doing the athletic stuff, can find an explosion there. But like I found a massive improvement in my sprints, and I didn't sprint forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because I think you would have been doing sprinting or like jump going down the rabbit hole and really focusing on it for like quite a while before you did ollies. So it's like you're not going to forget how to accelerate. You're not going to forget the feeling of it. So it's going to be more, you're going to lose a bit of sharpness from not practicing it. But because, and again, it's not exactly the same, but a lot of the power, a lot of the positions you hit and the intent of Olympic lifts does kind of match acceleration to a degree. So it's like you may not get that much faster, but if you're still running around once a week and then lifting heavy and fast, it's gonna keep it in place. Like it keeps you in. I think it keeps you in shape to be able to sprint still if it's done properly. Like because I think because you were still running around because of softball, that makes a big difference. But if it was like you were, I think if you were lifting but not even doing softball every week, I think that would then be interesting to see what would happen when you went back to it. Because I think then you would see like a big drop off, but then you'd come back fairly quick.
Come back, yeah, exactly. You don't lose any. You're kind of
Mm.
developing those skill sets. The other thing that I was like kind of thinking about is, and I would like to hear your thought processes on it, but Olympic lifting has been the best deadlift program I've ever ran in my life. And I have deadlifted very few times Olympic lifting, like actual deadlifting. And every time I go back to deadlifting now, dude, like my back feels so much stronger. I'm able to pull for so many more reps. And I'm like, dude, it's just like it was such a cool, like, and it makes sense, but it's like, it was such a cool, like, you're just getting a ton of volume pulling at like lower intensities and lower volumes. You're not just crushing yourself deadlifting as hard as possible all the time. Builds up a lot of those qualities, builds up a lot of those muscles. And like for me, the pulling action is ass. Like I'm just not, I'm a much better squatter than a puller. So like doing a lot of that stuff, dude, it was crazy how much, and it still is, like how strong my deadlift feels not doing deadlifts because I'm doing a ton of
Yeah.
pulling volume on these only lifts and not destroying myself. Because when I start programming deadlifts in my program, I just go full meathead and try to pull as much as possible, as often as possible. I just fuck myself up. But like that's like lower intensity pulling volume and just getting better at those pulls, dude. It has been like the best deadlifting program I've ever ran.
Yeah, I think a few things go with it because it's like I feel similar to you in that I don't feel that well suited to pulling, or at least not in like the traditional like powerlifters way. So use your back a bit, like round your back over, use your hips a lot. I want to be able to fire my hips through like it's the first step out the blocks or like it's a squat. So snatch and clean and jerk, even though yeah, you're gonna be further over the bar, you're gonna be more, you're gonna be more of a hinge position than you are than a squat. It's still way more squatty than a deadlift. So it's feeding into you pulling in a position that would be more similar to your squat, which is why I think it works. I think also just the sheer amount of effort you put into a snatch or clean and jerk, even when it's super light, means that you get something out of it because you are actually having to like voluntarily produce as much force as possible. Because if you did like, I don't know, so what, like, so for some of the snatch work, we were working at what, like probably 200, 210 pounds, which is what, like 90-ish kilos. That's not really heavy enough if you're just doing deadlifts to really get that much out of it if you're just deadlifting. But because you're trying to literally move as fast as possible, now there's a stimulus with a super lightweight. And I think just going from snatches to cleans to RDLs to deficits to pauses, you think you're getting loads of pulling in, but it's at a high speed with high intent. And also the positions are always slightly different. So you're not able to toast your back properly because you're not just deadlifting, you're doing all these different positions. So then it feeds into like you just getting better at pulling because you're doing it sub maximally super often and super fast. And I also think that like the strength you have to have in your back to brace against snatch and cleans when you're pulling really fast is a bit different to just deadlifting. Because like when if you get good enough at deadlifting, you can almost treat your back like you see some people do it. It almost looks like a fishing rod. So they start to like pull through with the hips, and then their upper back almost rounds, and you can see like the slacks being taken up by their upper back. But it's like a fishing rod. It's like they're allowing the bar to like bend into their upper back and then pull it. With like snatch and clean jerk, it's got to be like a crane, like you're yanking it out, like you're just yanking it, and you've got to keep your back solid. Like I think it feeds more into the latter, which means that your back's not having as much strain on it because it's not getting that like rounding motion under load super heavy. You're having to fight it.
Yeah, and it kind of fits the two of the things that we were talking about in the like it's almost like Olympic lifting is the sprinting version of deadlifting. Like the Olympic lifts are the sprinting version of deadlifting. Like you get that velocity beast, and it kind of confirms a lot of the like Brandon Carty stuff where he does lower, like he does sprinting versions of Ollie lifts for Ollie lifts. You know what I mean? Like the higher velocity Olympic lifts for actual Olympic lifts, but it's like it's also like a real Olympic lift is that already that velocity based. It's just a like velocity based deadlift. So it kind of helps his like philosophy and thought processes behind a lot of the velocity based stuff when it comes to Ollie lifts. And I saw it in the sense of if I'm moving the bar faster in these Ola lifts, it is improving the strength of my deadlift. Where a lot of people would say like that's not true, that doesn't really work. I'm like it worked really well for me actually.
Mm. Yeah, I think with that stuff as well, it's like we all know stuff where people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense as to why it works, but we can see that it has worked. So then it's like more asking, like, well, why does this make a difference? And I think it is just like you say, it's the sprinting of deadlifting, like, and that makes a big difference because you do see some people where like how many times we watched it, especially the guys who just want to deadlift big, they get it to the knee and we start to see the shaking back and forth of the hamstrings and they start to like basically like they're starting to die and they just can't get the bar to move past their knees. And you just think if you had just a bit more speed off the floor, the momentum would carry you past the knee and you'd be fine. And the snatch and clean shut kind of teaches you to do that. And I think that's where it gets. I think that's where some people don't really understand it. I also think people who say, "Oh, well, no, that doesn't really work." It's like, have you ever tried it? But that's always my question. Is like, have you ever tried it? Like, 'cause a lot of people who will say something is trash or a technique doesn't work, especially when they're looking at people who obviously are getting something from it. They've never tried it, or they haven't trained for long enough to actually understand how things work.
Well, and that's I think that's the beauty of Olympic lifts for me is like I would never fucking try that for deadlifts. I would never like I would never just do speed deadlifts to get better at my deadlift. Like I think there's just not enough intent for me. Like I don't have enough. Maybe it's just it's probably just me personally, but I don't have enough desire to just straight up drive my deadlift up. So like I would never run a 12-week speed deadlift program, you
Yeah,
know. But like it kind of just happened organically with these Oli lifts, and it gave me a focus of like I want to drive my Oli lifts. The secondary cause of that is I'm getting a ton of speed pulling volume done, and it helped my deadlift kind of
yeah.
organically rather than like me just trying to force myself through that program. There's no way I would do it. So it's kind of a cool like accidental science experiment that I would never run by myself, which I liked.
Yeah, I think with speed deadlifting as well, like you look at how speed deadlifting was done with like the West Side guys and stuff, and they use bands and chains in different variations. So like it almost sounds like they're similar to us, and that they don't care about pushing their deadlift so much they'll just do technique work. They're having to find ways around it because they just want to deadlift heavy. So it's like, but if you put bands and chains on, the plate weight's not that heavy, but we are gonna have to move it fast. Otherwise, the band is literally going to kick our asses. So we need to do something about it. Do you know what I mean? Like they're they're they've figured out a way around the problem to make it feel like heavy deadlifting without it being heavy, and like that's essentially what we're doing. Like snatch and clean jerk kind of feels like it feels like the intent is the same ish as heavy deadlifting because you're just trying to rip the head off of a weight, even if it's light.
Speaking of the West Side and Louis Simmons, did you ever dive into when Louis Simmons was experimenting with like banded cleans and banded snatches? Have you ever seen any of that stuff?
Yeah, I remember it was supposed to like barbell shrugged, wasn't it? Like he had some of the barbell shrug guys try it. If you get like there's the red band and then there's the one after that, the yellow one is super thin, like it feels
Yep.
super like super fragile. If you do snatches with that, it's still extremely dangerous, but you can feel what he's on about. If you do cleans or just power cleans, I wouldn't full clean it with the red band. It does make you can kind of see what he's getting at. It's just I wouldn't trust most people that I coach to do it. One, because setting the bands up is too dicey in a normal gym to be able to do the band hooks and to have deadlift platform stuff. And also, like, genuinely, like, I remember the first time I tried it, I missed it because I just didn't put my elbows through. And the middle learning just scraped all the way down my sternum, all the way down my chest because you can't just drop it. It's getting yanked to the floor. So, like, I liked it, but I was also like, there is no way that I can justify giving it to programming this for someone. So that's why I never really messed about with it anymore. I think maybe for certain stuff like pulls, overhead stuff, maybe powers and muscle snatches and push presses, I would mess with it. But for full snatch and clean and jerks, I just probably wouldn't do it.
I know, dude.
Maybe
It's such a
jerks
cool
actually.
feeling,
Maybe
but
put a
like you're
little bit of
saying,
band tension on
the
jerks.
setup is so sketchy. Like trying to like get that right and like, dude, if you fuck around with this at all, the one thing you brought up the muscle snatches, banded muscle snatches, I fucking love, dude. That's like one movement that like for some reason it like actively forces me to drive and like actually finish that like punch out that you've been trying to get me to feel. Like that the banded muscle snatch, that was a kind of an unlock for me. I definitely need to be doing more of those, but that was one where like the setup was simple enough to do. Felt way less sketchy than doing it from the ground, and I got the feel of like accelerating that bar and punching that bar up, which I really liked.
Yeah, I think even like doing what's I remember seeing someone talk about before. It might have been Will Fleming. He's another weightlifting coach. He's retired from weightlifting coaching. I can never remember how you say her last name, but there's a American super called Mary. She used to be called Coach Mary on Instagram for a bit, but now I think her name's like Mary Gustapin or something like that. But he used to get people instead of just doing vertical jumps to test your readiness, he used to just give them a fixed weight on muscle snatches. But you go from above the knee, you don't use contact, and you just try to rip it as hard as you can whilst attached to a foot to like an accelerometer. And I think that with bands could be really good because like it is just pure acceleration. There's no having to time like, or I have to wait till I've contact to the hip. You just start at the knee and you just rip it. And that genuinely, I think, does teach you how to actually stay connected to a barbell. Like I've tried it with a few people and myself. So one of my friends, Matt, recommended it to me, but just doing no contact muscle snatches from the hang, immediately I think like just tidies up how you use your arms because you can't swing it out, you can't do anything weird. You just have to rip your arms through.
Dude, and that's the in the current program we're running, I'm on week 3 of these like it's above the knee block snatches. Holy fuck, dude. Trying to accelerate that bar, I get absolutely bodied by doing those. Like it is so hard for me to like for some reason like if I can go from the ground or just like from a 6-inch block, I have enough time to get that bar going, but from going from
Yeah.
that above the knee position and a snatch was just weird because like if I do a hang snatch, it's my best snatch. Like it's by far my best snatch variation. But starting from that static start and trying to get that bar to move, I look like a dummy, dude. Like I get absolutely worked.
Yeah, I think with block stuff it's like you'll see a lot of people say, "Oh, but you can snatch way more from blocks than you can from floor." It's like, yeah, but for specific strength profiles, like if you look at a lot of guys who can snatch a lot from blocks, they tend to be people who are either just snatch specialists. There's a guy called Redon Manouchi. He's a French lifter. He's block snatch 185,
Oh,
weighing like
jeez.
I don't even think he weighed 90 kilos. And this is also he snatched 185, tried 190 a few times, just couldn't quite stand it up. But his back squat was like 220 at the time, like because in they were so close together. And then you look at like lifters like Ilya Ilin who said, "Oh, I love block snatches because it doesn't hurt my back and I can snatch loads." But then you look at the position he's in like this half squat position that's obviously really strong for him. So like I think it can be a lift where you can lift a lot more weight, but I think it's also just because it teaches you how to accelerate the bar to speed with less time. And I think one thing that I find helpful is trying to lift the bar from the block and get it to touch your hip before you like quote unquote jump. Because if you just go on the block and you go, right, I've got to get going from here, then it kind of feels like there's no time. But if you literally push the floor away, wait till the bar touches your hip and then go, it feeds into the lift being a bit slower. It gives you a bit more time to reduce force because you're trying to learn how to negotiate the position properly. And that's how I would say to do it. You're still trying to treat it as if it's like there's a bit of a first pull, so you push it off the block. Then when you feel it touch your hip, that's when you go. It's like yeah, like you're using the bar to tell you when to extend. Because if you extend into too quickly off the block, you just whack it forwards. Or like you're saying, it's like I'm just gonna get crushed because there's no time.
Yeah, yeah, and the those and my tempo snatches. If I do tempo snatches, dude, it's like a broad jump snatch. It is the most like forward movement
Mm.
snatch of all time.
I think what weirdly helped with those, I think again, I get like loads of little tidbits from Brandon, but he was just posting that he uses those like sprinter style like stompy step ups that he does in the Smith machine. He was
Yep.
saying he was like, "Oh, I don't just this is like specifically we're looking at hip extension, so you understand how to drive your hip upwards, not forwards." And I was like, "Oh, that's actually interesting." And I remember trying it because before I used to look at people doing those really bit like overloaded stompy step ups. I was like, for sprinting, I kind of get it, but maybe for super advanced people. But as a general strength exercise, I never really understood it. But when I started going, oh, but if I get the block so your actual hips are in the same position as they be for like a sprint or for like, the second pull of your snatch or clean, and then you just go, I've just got to drive my hips straight up. You learn, the delayed knee extension concept. You learn how to delay knee extension, but you learn how to do it by driving your hip upwards instead of just driving it forwards. And I think that can help make you understand in a snatch or clean what you're doing. Because if you get the bar to above your knee and you feel like it's too slow, you panic and you just whack your hips forwards. But if you understand how to extend your hips, like specifically just extend them up without straightening your legs, it makes it feel like you've got an extra 5 or 6 inches to pull the bar. So that's like a weird one where it's like it's not a specific exercise, but it kind of is. I think sometimes that can help to throw those in, like just like really stompy ones where like your hips just above parallel when your foot's on the block, and you just try to jump to drive your hip straight up. That's a really useful one, I think.
Dude, and that's kind of like a real life example of something we were talking about earlier, where you're talking about the sensory and feels. It's like, okay, like, because I'm kind of the same way with a lot of step ups that you see a lot of it. It's like I've done them before, and it's like, okay, I don't feel like I feel like I could do a lot better like quad stimulus or strength stimulus here. It's weird, but like again, how you frame it and what you're looking for of like it's not necessarily about that. It's about getting a feel, an unlock of what it feels like to move into there. And I think that's something that's just a real life example of like you can program things for the physiological stimulus, and obviously there's all of these things in one. It's not just one, but like you can program it for the physiological stimulus, or you can program it for that sensory or unlock of that feel to get an athlete to feel something in a different environment, and then be like, okay, you felt that, you explored that, how can we bring that to here? And for me, the more I pay attention to those things, the more I'm like, oh, that's what that's supposed to be like. Let's go try it here. And so many times, like if you just let the body do those feels, and like you just give you put your body in enough environments to kind of get some of this sensory input, the body's way smarter than you think, man. It is way smarter than you think. It's not just a fucking muscle game of like everything is straight up. I need to like have a physiological response here. If you can get that body to feel, you can use a lot of the like physiological stimulus that you have been doing, and you can apply it to the skill that you want to apply it to. Batting is the same way. That I think that's why I love Olympic lifts so much. It's like you can be as strong as you fucking want. If you don't know how to apply that force at the right time, at the right moment, in the right spot of the ball to the bat, like that transfer, it does you no good. And snatching is the same exact way. You can be as strong as you want. If you can't get that timing right and that feel right, it does you no good. You're just wasting so much force.
Yeah, and I think it's like batting, weightlifting, and to sprinting as well. I think are quite interesting in that it's like you're working on like what seems to be like a singular output that should be quite simple to do. Like so, like other things you could maybe think to compare it to is like powerlifting, where it's just strength output, distance running, where it's just aerobic output. But it's like with powerlifting and aerobic stuff, if you just do the training and you get your loads right, so you load manage properly, you're almost guaranteed a result as long as you manage it properly on like the back on the front end. Whereas with sprinting, like how many times do you see like good example is just like the lead up to the world champs we've seen this year. You'll see guys where you think they are going to absolutely scorch it when they get to world champs. They don't even qualify, but they look like they're having the season of their life. And then Noah Lyles hobbles over every race and he still comes third, even though he's running injured. And you're like, so why is it that you could train really well, perfectly, and you still don't get the result? And I think it's because there's a lot more that goes into it than just, oh, well, if you just get stronger and faster, you'll be fine. Like there's skill, there's more to it than just that. Like in order to be able to show how fast or how powerful you are, you've got to be able to have like the right feel for things, and that's where those drills come into place. Like I never until I did the step ups and went, oh, I get why so many sprinters do them now, and I get why Brandon uses them for snatch and clean and jerk development. I then was like, okay, I understand A marches. Like A marches, A skips, B skips, and all that stuff. I was like, okay, I get them now. Because I remember someone saying, I don't really get why we're doing these if you're standing up really tall, but when you're sprinting, you have to lean over. And I was like, it's teaching you how to keep your hips up as you drive your foot down towards the floor. So you're basically not bending your torso, you're understanding how to keep your posture. Now I understand it. And then all of a sudden your drill transfers better. It's like you're saying, like, you have to understand the intent for the drill so that then it will transfer. It's like Tom Platt squats completely differently to a powerlifter does because he's like, I'm literally trying to rip my quads apart. Like I'm trying to make them grow as much as possible. Whereas a powerlifter's like, I just want to get my hips below parallel and get up again. And they're doing the same exercise, but like they both feel entirely different things because the intent they've used going into it is different. It would be the same as like I can imagine talking to different batters about what it is they're doing. Like the result is going to be entirely different, even though they're doing the same thing because they have different intents for how they hit the ball or how they spot a ball and stuff.
Yeah, dude. It's so like just one level deeper of thinking. I think that's like, I think the A skips and B skips are like a perfect example of like, you have so many coaches that just parrot and like copy. Like this is just what we do with a sprint warm up. You know what I mean? And there's none of that intent. There's none of that thought process of why are we doing that drill? You know what I mean? It's like, and I try to like mention this. It's like never the drill that is bad. It's never the exercise that's bad. It's what's your understanding of that? What's your focus? What are you trying to get out of it? If you have a focus, you have an intent behind that, and you're trying to get an athlete to feel something, you can do the goofiest thing in the fucking world, and it's going to work because that's your goal, right? But I just think so many coaches, it's just like, this is what I did. I really have no thought process, like a secondary thought process behind why we did it, and just like kind of parrot and program rather than being like, no, this looks weird, or this looks simple, or this looks dumb, or this looks like there's not a physiological component to this, but I want the athlete to feel this here. And then from that feel, I'm going to take that feel and apply it to the main stimulus of the day, or it allows them to unlock something for that main stimulus of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's like you'll be able to you'll be able to see it when you go and watch. Again, Matt and Ben the Bounce always go on about with like track coaches where like they'll listen to you running and they'll be able to tell you what you're doing wrong and give you a drill to fix it because they've got all these different ways of looking at things. I think with some weightlifting coach you'll get as well. There's who is it? It's a guy called Giles Greenwood. He runs a club here called East London Weightlifting. And a lot of the time, his program, I think it might have changed now because it's been a few years since I've seen him coach in person. But the program is like, I think he has a 3 day a week version and a 5 day a week version, but it's almost always the same. And he'll tell you to change some accessory based on what you'll need. But the exercise is almost always the same. And like to the point where you could probably see what he's programming for 2 or 3 months on one sheet of paper. But the way he explains the warm-up drills, what he tells you to do when you're snatching, and the primers he uses, that's what changes the program. So even though you're like, oh, I'm going to go in and do the same thing, you're not because he's gone, oh, when you snatch, I want you to think about this, or when you jerk, I want you to approach it this way. And like that can change everything. I think Dozer weightlifting's quite good at that with some of his cues. It's like he'll just be able to say, hey, do this. And then it makes you approach the exercise differently to get a better result. I think that's an underrated skill, being able to coach intent in movements better. Because like being able to give someone a drill is great, but being able to tell them this is what you're supposed to be getting out of it is something that's something that you need to be able to do on top, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that like secondary level of coaching, which I think is again, it's not all that exercises. There's a little bit deeper like thought
Mm.
process behind it, and like having that conversation with the athlete. Like I think that's a big point too. Is like I think that's one thing you did a really nice job of. Like I would tell you, like I'm not feeling something here, or like I am feeling something here, and like this is maybe it doesn't look pretty, but I do get the feel that you're going for here, and you just right away be like, okay, like that one's not working. Like try this variation. Like I just think that's like kind of the thought process of having like and the benefit of having a lot of tools as a coach of like it's not one tool that matters. It's the tool that gets that athlete to feel what you want to feel. And you would tell me like, I want you to feel this here. I'm like, I'm not feeling it at all. You're like, you try this one. I tried that one. It was perfect. I was like, yes, that I'm feeling exactly what you want me to feel on that one. And that was super nice. One of the things I wanted to ask you before we end this podcast was I think the mobility piece, I get a lot of questions about like mobility when it comes to Olympic lifting, especially since like I think when I went from the forehead snatch to like not forehead snatching anymore, but it was like, did you improve your mobility like crazy? Did you go nuts there? And like there was a lot of unlocks, there was a lot of pieces there that I did mobility wise, but a lot of it was also just getting a lot of the feels that you were talking about, and the timing you talked about. But like, how do you look at like mobility when it comes to weightlifting, and like how do you progress that? Because that was one cool thing you did with me too, is like you gave me a lot of drills that were super helpful, and then you found ways to progress the drills, and then you found ways to like take those mobility drills to the next level and like continue to stimulate like something as simple as a hang. Like when we were starting off hanging, it was just body weight hangs for like 30 seconds, 2 minutes before we went. By the end of it, we were doing like super heavy hangs and opening those up, and that's like a simple progression or regression model, but you also had a bunch of different tools with the mobility. Like, how do you look at mobility? When do you look at that as like the limiting factor for athletes? And like maybe just some general like tips for athletes that are struggling with the mobility piece of Olympic lifts.
I think my mobility stuff has progressed a lot. To be honest, mainly from talking to he's called G Money on Instagram, Garrett, where mobility before, I would always think of it as well. So either something doesn't want to be stretched because it's either A, not strong enough, so your body's panicking, or it just doesn't, or you just don't understand how to put in that position. Um, Whereas then looking at the way Garrett puts it, it's like, yeah, that can be what is going on, but it could also just be a case of your muscles just don't understand how to move the joint in like to move your bones with it, like move the joint across in the way that you want. So like looking at it as I needed to try and break the movements down. So I think of what did we start you off with? It was the weighted hangs, and for me that is just like, can your body actually just tolerate your arms being pulled like up and back away from your body without panicking so it can accept some length? That's like a really easy one because sometimes like some people don't have very many movement options in their upper back, so they're just like, when like it feels like your upper back is like compressed. So it's like you can't really move it because it's like all it feels like all your vertebrae are squashed together. Sometimes just a weighted hang or even like just doing like pullover holds, like with a weight back here, it just helps to lengthen. It feels like it basically gets your vertebrae and your ribs off of each other. Whether that's how it works or not. The other thing I would just generally look at as well is like if you just don't have very much movement. So it's not like you have a very specific like niche mobility issue, like one shoulder's turned in, one's turned out, and you twist, like it's just I can't get overhead, then it's like, well, what options do you have to move at your shoulder? You've got the ability to obviously like flex and extend. You can rotate it, you can abduct it, you can raise it this way, and then you can maybe move your scap around. It's like, well, just try to address each one and see what shit. Like your hip's a really good example of it. Um, you can make up the hip movement you need by hip shifting and then rotating. So you can abduct and adduct, shift your hips side to side, and then you can do rotation. Like if you just do really boring, basic like tests to be like, what can't you do? Then you just work on that. Half the time, it will then make space in the joint, and that's what we do with your shoulders. First, it was the hangs, then it was pullover-ish type stuff. Then it was classic like Y raises, just to see if it was like, okay, can you actually, do you know how to raise your arms overhead? Then it was the side lane pullover stuff. Because it's like, right, if you're still struggling to be able to get your arms to lock out, maybe it's that like your lats aren't actually lengthening to let you put your arms overhead. And something in there's worked, but the reason that it did work is because we just went, well, what are all the possible things that could be like holding your shoulder from being able to reach up so your elbow could lock out? Like, because the shoulder's more difficult because there's like loads more options you have. Like you've got loads of different positions your scapula can be in, then all the different like ways you can rotate your shoulder, and even like rotating your shoulder when your arm's out to your side, like in a snatch versus overhead and jerk, or in a front rack. Like you could have the best shoulder rotation overhead, which you didn't. But then in a front rack, like your front rack was pretty good in terms of you can keep quite a close grip, keep a full grip, and actually have your elbows relatively high, even though it didn't necessarily feel great to begin with. So it's like, oh, so you've got good shoulder rotation when your shoulder blades are apart, just not when they're together and your arms are overhead. Do you know what I mean? So it's like working out what combinations of movements do you not really have that well, and you just got to go about opening them up. For some people, it's easy. You just give them a couple of basic drills they've never done before and unlocks it. For some people, it's like, again, with you, it was having to do it, weighted hangs, loads of overhead reaching stuff, loads of arm stuff, and eventually unlocks. But that's the way that I would approach it. So it's like, try to break down the joints into not like, oh, I can't go overhead, so I just need to try and go overhead harder. It's also like, but does my shoulder work as a shoulder should? Like, can I externally and internally rotate in different positions? Can I like move my scap around? And then usually if you address those things, it will fix it.
Yeah, dude, I love that N of one like little science experiment. Like you're like just messing around and tweaking slight little things and keeping things that work. And like one of the things, dude, it was I do think like there was a mobility piece because I started doing those like the preacher stretch, the weighted hangs, those side pullovers, dude, those were absolute fucking money. The first week I did those, it felt like my shoulder was just like dislocating. By the time I was done, I was able to do like 50 pounds on those, and it felt amazing on that lat. And just like a lot of that overhead reaching position, getting nice and long. It was like my lats were so fucking tight, and everything was just so tight. I opened that up, felt good for a while, felt good. But then, dude, the unlock that you had me do was a lot of those dislocates, like the banded dislocates. And that wasn't, I don't even think that was a
Yes,
mobility
yeah.
thing. That was the feel of like, I was doing all that. Oh, I opened it up. My lats felt a lot better. I felt like I could get length now. But then it was like the feel of like keeping tension and like rotating back. And like a lot of it was like opening up the chest then. Like it opened up like the chest was opening up. And I still do that one to this day. It was like that was a really sick, like again, I don't even know if it was like a physiological mobility thing, but like it was like that was the first time I had felt that. And every time I do snatches now, like I just sit there in that ISO and like hold that position. And it's like, okay, this is what it feels like to hold that position. And that was a super big unlock for me.
Yeah, man. I think like I've got to like try it on a few more people to see it. But like one of the things that I find really useful at the moment, because I've got really bad hips, like I'm pretty sure, as well as the ruptured ligament I have on the right, I'm pretty sure I've got labral tears on both sides. But when like my hips don't rotate very well, so like I can feel my hips aren't rotating very well, it literally just feels like I'm cutting my hip capsule open in the back. It feels like the femur is just digging into it, cutting it open. As soon as I can get rotation and then also a bit of hip shifting side to side, it's literally like hips are new, like it's like I never got injured. And I think for hips, if you try and I think most people who are listening to this will know what I'm saying. Alec Blennis's hip plane drill, the hip aeroplane where you put the kettlebell behind your back. If you do that and then you do just Cossack squats, but you stay super low and you slide side to side, you then get a hip rotation, but then you get a hip shift where you're getting abduction, adduction, and rotation. If you get those two things in your warm up, it should take care of basically most problems you have. Because a lot of weightlifters, and I think you're built the same, we're really wide, so we're really good at not rotating, but we're not good at actually rotating. And if you get people like that and you just get them to shift side to side, that will usually cheat your way into a bit of rotation. So then when you go do the rotation drill, it'll improve. And I think with shoulders, the one that I was thinking is probably going to be the one is the dislocates I got you to do. you can do them standing, but I actually think doing them prone on a bench and then on your back, so supine if you want to call it, on a bench, and then just doing the loo raises with plates. So then you get basically the side to side shifting motion with your shoulders, and then you get the rotation through the dislocates. I think that could take care of most people's problems for overhead stuff because you're essentially doing the same thing as you do for the hip, rotate it through the joint, and then get the abduction and adduction and the shifting around of the shoulder blade. Like I think that would save people a lot of time if they just spammed those two things.
Hell yeah, dude. That's a good little cheat sheet there. Last question before we finish up this podcast. What are you up to, dude? What are you training for right now? It looks like you're getting back after training, getting back after coaching, getting after posting. Like, seems like you've been really consistent with that stuff. What's life look like right now? What are your goals? What are you doing?
At the moment, I am aiming to try and get on the bobsleigh team for Great Britain. I got asked to do talent transfer, which is basically when like they call up other sports and ask, "Hey, do you have anyone that we could use that you don't want?" I got 4 or 5 weeks to trial for it, but as I think you follow like Brandon and Lackey and all that stuff. Like it's the Olympic cycle, so it's the hardest time to get in. So my time's improved with the sled pushing, but I didn't quite make it. So I want to go back next year and try and do it because the training for it basically is just is how I enjoy training. Apart from that, I'll probably do a weightlifting comp here and there. I might try and do some like more like invitational comps in Europe, and then if all else fails, I will probably pick up a kickboxing fight next year if I don't get onto the bobsled team. But that's what I'm aiming for at the moment because that kind of like suits what I want to do. I want to get better at sprinting, but I still want to lift, and bobsled kind of it kind of need you to do both.
Yeah,
So
dude, if you get to train the way you like training and you get to make an Olympic team, that'd be pretty badass.
100%, yeah.
And what's the did you just have a meet? What was the post today with was it like the British Open?
Oh, that was British Nationals. That's it's a group of they basically do a lot of the refereeing and like ushering and like TOing and
Okay.
stuff at comps to the bar. They're basically they're technical officials, but they also do photos in the back room. But they're I think now that it's all over and they've developed the photos, they're just posting loads of them. So that was from I think it was July.
Okay, so
June
that
or
was a while
July.
ago.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
How did that go? Was that good?
It was okay. I was in the 98 kilo class. I took a lift to win. I missed the jerk and then I came sixth because the class like we were all 2 or 3 kilos apart. So it's a very
So
good competition.
close.
I enjoyed it, but I also completely fucked it. So it was fun, but I also did completely fuck it up.
That's dope, dude. Yeah, I just want to say it was running your program was fucking awesome. It got me. I think I went from like a 315 clean to hang cleaning 365. So that was pretty sick. My snatches have improved dramatically. All of the athletic stuff, it just made it fun, dude. I showed up every single day. I enjoyed my training. It was not a program where you showed up like, dude, some of these programs, I get there's a reason for it, but it's just like it just doesn't work with my brain where it's like you buy a program and for 37 weeks you're running the same exact thing. Like it really looked like you took the time to like make slight little tweaks, slight little adjustments. Like the variety was there. I got every single time I went to the gym, it was like something new, something exciting, something fun. And it made me want to train and it made me significantly better at all of those. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh no, man, it's my pleasure. It was really fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys listening. Keep dropping wood.
Thank you for listening. Join us next week as we dive down another rabbit hole. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. Follow us on Instagram at Austin Yoakum to stay updated on future podcast guests. Keep chopping wood.